Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Caregivers Alliance Limited, I want to thank you and welcome you once again to our online book launch for Meet the Author session of One Husband, Two Men, session 5. This is our final session of this fundraising event that the author Margaret has very kindly offered to be in collaboration with our community of caregivers, and really thank her and all of you for having been part of this journey with us for the past few months. Today is going to be our very first bilingual session. So alongside myself, I also have Wai Han, my co-host, who will be kindly addressing as well as going through today's presentation in Mandarin as we introduce our speakers for the night. Just a couple of house rules. Gentle reminder that if you have any questions, you can type them into our Zoom chat box. If you have any thing that you wish to share, kindly keep it towards the end of our panel. And also, all purchases of our books, 40% will be going from the proceeds will be going towards CAL up until the end of this month. So for those of you who have not gotten your hands on the book yet, please do so. The QR codes are available on our slides, and we'll also be sharing the link shortly. We want to once again thank Word Image for their generous sponsorship to this fundraising campaign. This has been such a tremendously fulfilling journey for all of us the last couple of months from last year up till to now. And we really appreciate every one of you following us and joining us for each one of our sessions. We seek your understanding that this session is going to be recorded. So if there is anyone here who is not comfortable with that, you may exit the chat group, and this particular recording will be uploaded on another day. In the meantime, I will hand it over to Wai Han to quickly go through the points that I raised in Mandarin for our Mandarin-speaking caregivers.
各位晚上好，非常欢迎你来到这网上的线网上的新书发布会和座谈。我们很感谢这本书的作者，书名《一位丈夫，两个男人》。很够人深思。我们的作者王慧琪女士，她的通常用的名字是 Margaret， 所以我继续翻译的时候会用 Margaret 来指引这位讲者。那我们今晚很特别，有双语的这个讲坛，希望大家尽量如果有问题要发挥的话，等到我们两位讲座员讲完之后，你才发问，要不然你可以在我们的网线上打下你的问题。这次的发布会很高兴能够得到出版商的赞助，我们卖到的书的48%将会捐给我们的照顾者联盟，做他们的工作费用。那今晚我们就继续来介绍一下我们两位讲者。Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you so much, Wai Han. As mentioned, we will now introduce the author of the book, One Husband, Two Men, Miss Margaret Ong. Margaret was Vice President at Hewlett-Packard Asia Pacific Japan, located in Singapore. After her husband's diagnosis, she became a caregiver volunteer trainer with Caregivers Alliance Limited in 2014. She co-facilitated the C2C training program, as well as participated in advocacy talks to help reduce the stigma around mental illness. Since January 2020, she has been involved with Caring for Life, a non-profit organization that seeks to establish a community approach to early intervention of suicide ideation and care. She is currently one of their volunteer trainers as well. In today's theme of journeying together for an inclusive society, I welcome our speakers for the evening, Margaret Ong and Dr. Ang.
今晚我们的主要嘉宾就是 Margaret 王慧琪女士，她是这本书《一位丈夫两个男人》的作者。自从她的丈夫得到了这精神病之后，她很积极的去了解这个病情，而且也参与这个照顾者联盟的工作，我们很感激她。另外的讲员就是我们非常熟悉的洪永元医生，他是双语人才，所以轮到他讲的时候，我的功夫就少得多，他可以即刻自己翻译。谢谢。
We'd also want to acknowledge Dr. Ang, who has taken the time to be with us this evening alongside Margaret as we go through talking about a more inclusive society. Dr. Ang is a familiar face to our community here at Caregivers Alliance Limited. He has been practicing psychiatry for the last 30 years. His area of interest includes psychotic illnesses, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, and stress-related disorders. Dr. Ang was formerly a senior consultant psychiatrist, holding the rank of colonel with Singapore Armed Forces. He has also held various positions, such as president of the Singapore Psychiatric Association, chairman of the chapter of psychiatry, Academy of Medicine, chairman of the Action Group for Mental Illness, member of the National Council on Problem Gambling, and member of the panel of medical experts, subordinate courts. Dr. Ang is actively involved in lecturing to nursing students at the Nanyang Polytechnic, as well as counselors at the Executive Counseling and Training Academy. He champions the mentally ill and is passionate about public education on mental health topics. He is the recipient of 2 National Day Awards, the Public Service Medal, PBM, and the Public Administration Medal. It is an honor to have you with us this evening, Dr. Ang.
洪医生的一系列的名衔我不用一一的介绍，最重要，他是位真的有爱心的精神病医生，而他对这个名词精神分裂症有他的见解，所以我们不要多谈，让2位讲者开始谈吧。Nadia?
I would like to first invite Dr. Ang to begin tonight's I would like to first invite Margaret to proceed with tonight's proceedings. Margaret, please.
Thank you, Nadia. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for patiently following me through all the chat series. And today will be our concluding chat series titled Journey Together for an Inclusive Society.
大家好，我非常感谢你们那么的亲切的跟随我走过这几个月的时间。今晚是这系列的最后一堂，我们的题目携手同行，共创一个包容的社会，希望我们能够好好的分享。Margaret.
Margaret, you're muted.
Sorry. Why the need for an inclusive society? Coping with mental illness is an immense struggle for any family. It is even harder today with a much smaller core family unit. All of us need social connection and acceptance to function normally and independently in the society, let alone persons with mental illness.
我们为什么需要有人来资助，让我们好好的照顾患有精神病的家人、亲人？不管是不是有病，我们普通人都很需要有其他人的扶持来度过一切的困难，更何况是一位有精神病的人，所以我们是很需要有这个包容的社会来互相扶持。
Next, please. There are 3 recovery phases for persons with mental illness. They are not sequential. Basically, a recuperation phase could advance to rebuilding phase, but could quickly relapse and fall back to stage 1. Similarly, if the person could advance to discovery stage 3, very quickly, the person could also relapse to stage 1.
这个过程有3个阶段，大概来讲是疗养、重建、探索。但是这3个阶段不是1、2、3这个步骤，而可能是反反复复。一个病人可以从疗养跳到探索，又倒回重建，或者又再倒回疗养的阶段。
Recuperation phase, stage 1, basically means stabilizing psychosis. Stage 2, rebuilding, basically means getting back on their feet. And stage 3, discovery phase, means to be able to live life independently.
第一个阶段就是疗养，得到医治，接受医治。第2个阶段就是希望能够融入社会。而最后第3个阶段，这个病者可算是可以从在社会里好好的运作，可以交朋友啊，工作啊，也另外可以影响政府或者公共的那些政策。
Every stage has its needs for the persons with mental illness. Stage 1, caregivers' role is absolutely crucial here. And treatment is the first line of defense.
第一个阶段最重要就是很基本的问题，让这个病患者得到医疗，得到照顾。你一定要经过这一阶段，才能够开始这个病患者的复原。
Stage 2 is all about relearning skills. It could be social skills, functional skills, and new knowledge.
第2个阶段就是让这位病者开始重新的学会怎么样融入很好的人际关系，可能也有工作方面的知识，另外就是可能也需要得到好的教育。
The discovery phase, it's a phase that requires you and I in the community to be aware and embrace diversity, no discrimination for persons with mental illness.
第3阶段，这个 探索的阶段，需要你和我所谓的平常人接纳这位曾经有病的病患者，或者还是正在接受治疗的病患者，让他可以融入正常的生活。
Without social inclusion, it is difficult to have employment inclusion or public policy changes that would embrace our loved ones.
我们心爱的人如果需要好好的融入社会，就必须有就业的机会，也需要有那些不符合他们的需要的公共政策能够得到很好的改善，让他们有机会重大社会。
Next, please. Today, I'm going to focus on the 3 inclusion strategies, and I'm going to leave out the education inclusion, employment inclusion, and public policy changes.
今天我要谈的是三方面的要点，在策略方面，我不会提到那个教育和政府或者公共策略那些方面啊，因为我想针对这3方面来谈。
Next, please. So the first one is caregivers inclusion strategies. The objective here is to ensure that we provide the best possible care for our loved ones.
在这个第一个策略啊，照顾者方面，我们主要是要帮忙照顾者，给予他们的家人、有病的亲人最好的照顾。
So empowering and cooperative partnership with mental health professionals is necessary, be it for inpatient or outpatient care.
不管我们那位亲人是正在留医，或者还是在家里休养，这位照顾者必须和那些心理医生或者照顾者的处理的经理等人要有很好的沟通，才能够做出最好的决策，来照顾他们的家人。
My apology for my dog barking. I had to smack his bum just now to shut him up. Okay. All right.
Margaret 说对不起，她刚才需要叫她的小狗啊不要吵啊，所以静了一下。
Okay.
The dog agree also what we say.
洪医生说啊，小狗也同意我们在讲的话。
Okay. The partnership is necessary to provide additional information, especially when it comes to consultation with the doctor for proper diagnosis.
这个密切的跟治疗师联络，来谈这位病人的情况是非常重要。他们这样好好的互相给予资料，比如说照顾者必须告诉医生病人有什么发展，这样才能够好好的找到正确的方案。
For example, my husband, the most time he would spend with the doctor is perhaps 2 to 5 minutes at most. And he would appear well because he will minimize his symptoms during the consultative session. And it is difficult for the doctor to provide a proper diagnosis through the observation made in 2 to 5 minutes. Therefore, a caregiver role is to supplement with information by providing all the observations made since the last appointment to this visit.
我用我的丈夫的例子来跟大家谈谈。我丈夫去看那个治疗医生的时候，只花2分钟到5分钟的时间，而在这短短的时间内，他会摆出最好的表现。那医生是很难知道他究竟发展到什么程度，他的病情。而身为照顾者，我可以从上一次见医生之后到这次见医生的时候，好好的记录下我的丈夫有什么的发展，病情的发展，让医生有很好的背景，能够诊断我的丈夫究竟需要什么药或者什么样的医疗方法，这样就会让我的丈夫得到准确的照料。
The other benefit of this partnership is to be able to discuss treatment approaches, the pros and cons, leading to a joint decision between the doctor and the caregiver on behalf of the patient if the patient is not able to do so.
如果那个病人本身不能够好好的解释他的需要或者他的病况，那这样的合作，从照顾者和医生之间的合作，他们可以探讨什么是最好的策略，来帮忙这位病者得到最好的照顾。
What happens after discharge from the hospital? Clearly, we need to have a point of contact in the event there is a crisis to manage or we need further assistance in terms of advice for the care of our loved one. In this case, I mentioned the family therapist and the case manager if your loved one is admitted to IMH because they operate in a panel, and the panel consists of family therapist, case manager, psychiatrist, doctors, pharmacists, head nurse, and medical social worker. So post-hospitalization, we need to establish clear point of contact in the event you need further advice.
我们在病人离开医院的时候，比如说病人正在医院里受治疗，他离开之后，那位照顾者必须有一个很好的联络站，让他在急需要的时候，紧急的情况下，可以有一些人可以给予有用的关怀和告诉他应该怎么做。在从我们的精神病医院那边，那个正式的名堂我忘了，对不起IMH 大家比较清楚。IMH 里面有一系列的医疗和照顾者，包括家庭治疗师、个案经理、精神病医生和医院的服务员。这些人可以好好的给予资助， 帮这个照顾者安心的去处理什么特别的并发症。
Next, please. If you are an outpatient, you could either contact your private clinic. If not, you could access any hotline support for crisis management with a third-party organization for outpatient care.
如果不是住院的话，如果有什么特别的情况，照顾者需要得到资助，可以找那些热线资助者或者其他机构的帮助，他们都会很积极的帮忙的，尤其是在紧急的危机的情况下，有时候。
So for caregivers, it is important for you to establish the list of contact in the event of crisis management.
身为照顾者，你必须预先的列好这些你可以联络的人或者机构，因为到了紧急的时候可能会慌乱，那有这个表，你就可以好好的去找帮助。
Now, healthcare inclusion strategies. I talk about the discussion on treatment options between the mental health professionals and the caregivers or the patient themselves, if they are in a position to do so. It is also important to discuss options and plan for rehabilitation post-discharge when you find that your loved ones are starting to make progress in treatment.
那如果你有机会看到你的那位被照顾的亲人开始有好转，那你必须找心理健康专业人士或者那些对治疗康复有认识的人去安排个计划，好好的让这位正在康复的病人得到很好的疗养。
Medicare is not just about medication. In the rebuilding phase 2 of recovery, we need to adopt holistic care. There is the aspect of psychological, physical, including proper diet.
为了医疗好好的医治一位精神病人，我们不只是靠药物来解决一切，更需要的也是在心理上和他的整体的健康来照顾到，连饮食方面也要注意到。
Your loved one may need help to reframe their thought process, or even help to stay fit.
你的家人有病的家人可能需要帮助，怎么样的调整他们的脑子里面所想的东西，因为他病就是因为他的脑袋好像真的不能正常的操作了。
Next, please. On side effects, it is good to find out what are the common ones experienced by patients in Singapore and what can be done about it so that the negative impact can be minimized.
我们对药物的副作用要有积极的看待，要认识在社会里其他人怎么样面对这些药物的副作用，因为这是对病者康复的过程很有帮助的。
Why we need to proactively manage the side effects? Because there's also the consideration of your loved one's quality of life, not just purely their recovery.
我们需要考虑到副作用的问题，因为我们不仅是要我们的家人医好，我们要他真正的得到心身的快乐。
So it's always a trade-off between the benefits and the negative impact. And it's a fine line.
有时候真的很难摸索到要给多少药，会有什么作用，那副作用值得吗？这条线是很微的，我们不容易做决定。
On social and community inclusion strategies, don't hide your loved one in the closet. They feel more stigmatized if you feel and act ashamed.
我们对我们的家人的病，不应该把它藏在家里，这样你会让他觉得更羞耻、更孤立。因为社会和社区的包容是很重要。
Involve the family members from the onset. You can't expect others in the community to embrace your loved one if your own core family cannot accept their condition.
你一定要也将其他家人带入这个照顾的圈子。如果连自己的家人都不能够接受这位病人，或者朋友都不能接受他，我们哪里可以想象到外界其他的人可以容纳他呢？
So it's best when you share the facts and the signs to as broadly an audience as possible and let them know this is a brain illness. The process and hope of recovery is better for those who sought diagnosis and treatment earlier.
我们应该很坦诚的告诉越多人越好我的亲人有病，因为这样他有机会被接纳，他有机会接受治疗而不觉得羞耻，而这样做照顾者也好，做病人也好，大家都能够好好的继续这个疗程。
For caregivers, you are an advocate for your own community and for your loved ones because it is important to eliminate the misconception of what mental illness is all about.
你作为照顾者，你应该有自己的地位，自己的声音，可以讲出你所接受的经历和你的家人有病的家人的病历，因为这样你才可以 消除那些外界对精神病的误解，而从中可以鼓励你的家人好好的早期得到治疗，早期复原。就算你起初觉得尴尬，但是也无所谓，应该越广越好，告诉其他人。
The most important takeaway: love conquers all. Self-care is absolutely necessary for sustained caregiving role. And you change to adapt to the challenging circumstances and not react to it.
作为照顾者，我们不但要照顾好我们的家人，也要照顾到自己。因为就好像在飞机上我们常常听到通告，开始的时候，你如果看到氧气掉下来那个面罩的时候，你要先放上自己的面罩，然后照顾身边的人。看顾一位有精神病的家人也是一样，要不然我们自己也会垮下来。
The quote by Shannon Elder: "When I is replaced by we, illness becomes wellness." It is very true here because we need a whole community support to embrace persons with mental illness, to facilitate their recovery and to enable them to be integrated into the society so that they could also achieve normalcy and hopefully independent living.
这个英文的句子它的意思就是说，我们用我们这个词来代替我，这样做法呢，病也会变成健康。因为我们的有病的家人真的需要大伙一起互相鼓励，互相帮助，来让病人得到第一治疗，第二有康复的机会，第三能够再融入社会，可以独立的生活。
Well, thank you all. I certainly look forward to all of you becoming an advocate for your loved one as well as for yourself. And thank you for helping me spread the story. And thank you for your support for the book sales.
很感激大家听我的今晚的分享，而且我也希望你也能成为一位有声的照顾者，帮忙分享这个病和照顾两方面所需要的那个资助。我也希望你会继续支持这本书，让大家有机会多一点去认识这个照顾者的心声，和也会了解到病人的心声。谢谢。
Thank you so much, Margaret, for that powerful and uplifting sharing. It truly touched all of us in the room. I know I am myself, and I really appreciate everyone's support in this community. And we have to, we're definitely not alone, but we are stronger together. And now we're moving on to the next part of our panel this evening. I would like to invite Dr. Ang.
Thank you, Nadia. It's a pleasure to be here to share with you my understanding of mental illness, especially schizophrenia, and how we all together can destigmatize the condition and move forward. Okay. My slides, huh? I need my slides. Okay.
Mr. Ang, Dr. Ang, sorry, do you want to request for remote control again?
Yes. Options, huh? Okay. 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 Here you can see Leslie. Leslie is the husband of Margaret. And when Margaret first brought Leslie to see me, Leslie has got no insight into his illness. He refused to accept that he's got a mental condition. So Margaret would come into my clinic and would talk about the husband's condition. Leslie would be outside my clinic, loitering along the corridor and refusing to come in. And I can tell you, over the period when I was looking after Leslie, Margaret is clearly a model caregiver. She actually went out of the way to look after her husband. Initially, it was with a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of difficulty in accepting the illness, a lot of asking why. But eventually, she accepted the condition. She came to understand the condition better. And I think she's gone on to be what I would call the #1 Singapore best caregiver, I would say. I encouraged her to write the book, One Husband, Two Men, because I wanted her to share with as many caregivers as possible so that their understanding of the condition will motivate them to continue to look after their loved ones. So, tips for caregivers. If you have a family member with a mental condition, especially a serious condition like schizophrenia, what can you do? There are 3 things. First, appreciate 意识，你应该懂得什么是精神分裂。Try to understand, appreciate. Appreciate means aware, be aware of the condition. What is schizophrenia? 什么是精神分裂？ And the next step is to accept. Once you have understood, once you're aware and have appreciated the condition, accept the condition. 接受, accept especially whatever you cannot change. Whatever you can change, change. Whatever you can't, accept. 接受这个病，这个是一个 as what Margaret has said, is a brain disease. 这是一个脑的问题 brain disease, and therefore we accept the condition, just like any other brain or even physical problems, such as hypertension, diabetes. So acceptance. And then 适应, we adapt to the condition. 适应, we adapt to schizophrenia. We adapt to our loved one having schizophrenia. So it's not just schizophrenia, it's the person having schizophrenia. Distinguishing between what is illness, schizophrenia, and the person. They are 2 separate things. One is the person, the human being having the mental illness, and then the illness, schizophrenia. So let's talk about appreciating schizophrenia. 意识，什么是精神分裂? As a psychiatrist, I like to explain it in simple terms, making use of medical knowledge. What do we know of schizophrenia? Now, schizophrenia was coined in 1911 by Dr. Eugen Bleuler. Okay, Dr. Bleuler, 乌根波勒博士 1911年正式的名这个精神分裂。那个时候精神分裂其实是好像过早的痴呆。The previous name was dementia precox. 以前的名字是过早痴呆 precocious or premature dementia. In other words, Dr. Broiler noted that many patients with schizophrenia, although they are only 35, 40, 50 years old, they were behaving like a demented patient because the brain is no longer normal. They are forgetful, they have difficulty talking properly, they have difficulty thinking. So it's a cognitive dysfunctioning. That's why the earlier term, before 1911, it was called dementia precox. Until 1911, Dr. Broiler coined the term schizophrenia. So schizophrenia, phrenia refers to the diaphragm. Schizophrenia is the split between what is above the diaphragm, the thinking, and what is below the diaphragm, the feeling. So it's actually a split between thinking and feeling. And what are the 4 features he noted? First, affect blunting, 情绪迟钝，表情方面很差，情绪迟钝。Loosening of association, 思维分离。When they talk about A, they can jump to C. And when they talk about topic C, they can jump to E. There is no sequence, 语无伦次, no association. Ambivalence means 矛盾的心理. They are torn, they get conflicted very easily, torn by 2 forces, A and B. And then that's why they come across as indecisive. They are unable to make clear decisions. And they also have autistic behavior, 自闭的行为. Therefore, these were the 4 A's of Broiler. In the early days, when they look at a schizophrenic patient, many of them exhibited those 4 features. 这些是早期的种病症，他们看到的病症，情绪迟钝、思维分离、矛盾的心理和自闭行为。There you are. 这是正常的行为。This is normal behavior. Normal behavior is a result of the limbic system working closely with the prefrontal cortex. 当我们的中脑跟我们的大脑合作的时候，我们有正常的行为。中脑是接受五官的。All the 5 senses come to the limbic first. And from the limbic, you will proceed to the prefrontal cortex, or PFC in short. So the cooperation between the limbic and the PFC ensure behavior is normal. The 5 senses come to the limbic system and processed by the prefrontal cortex and then translated into behavior. In other words, limbic system is also called the feeling brain. The feeling brain must work with the thinking brain. The thinking brain is the prefrontal cortex. 中脑跟大脑要合作。中脑是感觉的情绪的，大脑是思考的。所以大脑跟中脑合作的时候，就形成正常的行为。当中脑跟大脑能够合作呢，就是正常的行为。当中脑下小脑的时候，就是不正常的行为了。
Remember, the rational brain sits on the emotional brain. When the 5 senses are picked up by the emotional brain, we can either react or reflect. When we react, we are said to be swinging down, and we act impulsively or irrationally. When we reflect, we are said to be swinging up, and we can therefore be in control of the situation. Prolonged disconnection leads to mental health problem. Therefore, techniques such as mindfulness, yoga, or meditation can help to connect the two parts of the brain.
总结就是说，当大脑跟中脑合作的时候，当 A 跟 B 合作的时候，我们没有不寻常的行为，没有异常的行为。当 A 跟 B 不能够合作的时候，我们就有很多问题出现。OK， 就是这样，就是说，当 A and B 不合作的时候，我们就有精神分裂。When there is a disconnect between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, or the feeling brain and the thinking brain, we will end up with abnormal behavior. In Taiwan, they prefer the term cognitive emotional disorder, and I like it very much. I would prefer CED rather than schizophrenia. Over the last 100 years, schizophrenia has come to suggest a negative connotation. Schizophrenia gives one the impression that one is crazy, one is mentally unwell, one is a lunatic. When you say cognitive emotional disorder, immediately you transform schizophrenia into a brain disorder. So it's better to call it cognitive emotional disorder. Cognitive for the thinking part of the brain, emotional for the feeling part of the brain. And I am strongly advocating that we call it CED rather than schizophrenia. Whatever it is a disconnection between A and B. When there's a disconnection between A and B, abnormal behavior happens. And one of the abnormal behavior is schizophrenia. But a better term will be cognitive emotional disorder. And in Chinese, 叫做思觉失调症。思觉失调症比精神分裂这个名称比较好。精神分裂已经有给一个人的负面的感觉了。你听到精神分裂，你就说这个人有精神病。如果你说思觉失调症，就是代表是一个脑的问题，那个思考方面跟觉方面不能合作，所以思跟觉失调了。如果思跟觉失调了，就是脑的问题了。所以这个名称我觉得比较好。我们从今以后，我们希望越多的人能够说思觉失调症，不是精神分裂症。So moving forward, let's promote CED rather than schizophrenia. What are the positive symptoms of schizophrenia? 精神分裂或思觉失调症的阴性病症是什么？因为中脑跟大脑不合作了 ，the limbic and the PFC are not working together. The thinking brain becomes chaotic. The thinking brain becomes upside down. The thinking brain goes into is random, vicious, ruminative thinking. And what are the symptoms? What are the symptoms? Delusions, hallucination, and loss of logical thinking. 当你有阳性的病症、状症、病症的时候，你会妄想，有幻觉，而且失去逻辑的思维。当你有这些三组的病症，就是说阳性的病症。It's very easy to remember DHL. Next time you see a van, the courier van, DHL, the DHL courier service. D is for delusion, H is for hallucination, L is for loss of logical thinking. What are delusions? Delusions are false beliefs. Okay. Hallucinations is seeing things, hearing things which are not there. And of course, you have loss of logical thinking, loss of touch with reality, loss of touch with reality. Okay. So these are what we call positive symptoms. In the early phase of schizophrenia, one tends to have positive symptoms. And then you have negative symptom, 阴性的病状啊，症状，阴性的症状。Negative symptoms would include not socializing, 不和人交往 or 缩退 not motivated, 没有动力 then living in a world of his or her own 活在自己属于自己的世界 and that is what we call negative symptom, characterized mainly by withdrawal, not motivated, lying on bed for the whole day, not coming forward to help in housework or do something, not going out for exercise. These are what we call negative symptoms. I always describe it is like living in a glass cage. You can see them, they can see you, but when you want to connect with them, you're blocked by the glass. When you want to connect with them, you're blocked by the glass. It is very hard to bond with somebody with schizophrenia because of the negative symptoms. And if they are having positive symptoms, like DHL, they may be talking to themselves. They are hearing voices and talking to themselves. So when you have a combination of negative and positive symptoms, you find that it is very hard to connect with them. So the severity of the illness, 疾病的严重程度, it can be mild to very severe. It can be 从轻微的到严重的病症. When it's mild, you would only have a few relapses. The brain scan will not show much damage. But when you have chronic multiple relapses, then you look at the brain. The brain scan will show you shrinking of the brain tissue and then enlargement of what we call the ventricle because of the shrinking of the brain tissue. That's why before 1911, it was called dementia precox. If your brain is shrinking, obviously you are like a demented patient. And that's why sometimes I feel that schizophrenia is a very serious mental illness because of the damage to the brain. No wonder they have no insight. No wonder they continue to hear voices on a long-term basis. No wonder they cannot connect with people. It's just a demented patient who cannot connect with the outside world, with others. So I think largely up to a point when the brain is damaged, then the picture of dementia appear. 那个脑会被损害到。如果脑呢，如果你有很多次的病情的复发，那个脑会变成越来越严重，严重到好像说早期的痴呆症一样。虽然你是40岁，有了思觉失调症，你很容易会变成好像一个有老人痴呆症的病人了。原因是为什么呢？因为那个脑经过很多次的病的复发，变成已经损坏了。Now, Margaret already said, caregivers are very important in giving history to the doctor. Margaret 已经跟我们讲了，那个照顾者他所提供的资料给医生是很重要的。为什么呢？诊断精神分裂症没有可用的诊断的测试，所以我们很需要照顾者提供的病史。We rely a lot on history from caregivers. That's why the cooperation between the caregiver and the doctor or the psychiatrist is very important. 所以呢，那个照顾者跟医生的合作是非常重要的。第二点就是要接受精神分裂症。We have to accept the illness, especially if there's nothing much you can do. You have to accept and then realize that this is something that you have to do your best to help the patient. It is not malingering. It is not pretending to be unwell. It is not attention seeking. It is a brain disease, a brain disorder. So once you accept it's a brain disorder, it's easier to proceed to the next step. And the next step is adapt, 适应精神分裂. And adapt, what do we do? Again, Margaret said, besides medication, we have to use other methods. 除了药物，我们要其他的方法。And 其他的方法包括什么呢？心理辅导，包括运动，包括心理治疗，包括很多嗜好。Many methods, from meditation to psychotherapy to exercise to social life to building a repertoire of hobbies. These are other methods. And again, a holistic approach, 整体的治疗方法就是要提高那个生活的质量 the quality of life. As far as I can see, there are 4 aspects that we need to take care of. 生物上 biological is a brain disorder. Let's treat early, give the right medication, and minimal relapses. When you have minimal relapses, the brain will not be damaged. 你提供好的药物，能够越少的复发率，越少的复发，那个脑就不会受到损坏。心理很重要，心理建设很重要，因为有了这种病，他们的自尊非常低。When you have this illness, your self-esteem is affected. So you need to go for counseling. You need to go for psychotherapy if necessary to promote your self-esteem, to realize that you have an illness. It is not because of your personality. It's not because you're lazy. You have an illness and you need to recover from your illness and build your self-esteem. Okay, socialization. Margaret already said, don't leave your loved one at home. Bring your loved one out to socialize, to mix with people, and to make people realize it's a brain disorder. It is nothing to be afraid of. And then the more friends he has, 你交越多的朋友， then 你的生活质量，你的 quality of life 就会提高了。Okay? And lastly, 不要忘记心灵的建设。 Spiritual growth is very important. We know the brain. We know a lot about the brain. We know the mind. Then we need to have an overall spiritual aspect as well. 心灵上的建设是非常重要的。So 总结 these are the 3 points. Appreciate, accept, adapt. Appreciate, accept, adapt. Appreciate, accept, adapt. The 3 A's. Then 也要照顾自己。Please remember to appreciate yourself, accept yourself, adapt to yourself. Your weakness, your strength, especially to make sure you don't have a burnout. If you have a burnout, a caregiver burnout, it is very hard for you to help your loved one. So the 3A also apply to you. After you look after your loved one, please look after yourself. Self-care is very important. Again, alluded to by Margaret just now, the importance of looking after yourself. And then you can play your role, 你的角色，适应你的角色，扮演你的角色。所以你要意识到你的角色是什么，你要接受你的角色是什么，你要适应你的角色。好像Margaret 是 Leslie 的太太，所以她的角色是怎么样成为一个太太。可是 Margaret 有2个孩子，当 Leslie 有病的时候，开始有病的时候，2个孩子还在求学，还在读书，所以她也是要作为一个妈妈的角色。Margaret, when Leslie first had his illness, also needed to look after 2 young sons, and that's a role as a mother as well. Again, appreciating, accepting, adapting to her role, mother to 2 kids, and husband and wife to a husband with a brain disorder. So my second last slide, looking forward for schizophrenia, 展望精神分裂症. Okay. One day, I hope that everyone can have what we call personalized treatment. 个性化的治疗，就是说 using pharmacogenomics. Why is this person so sensitive to medicine? Is it because of genetic reason? Can we then look at how to customize or tailor the medication to the genetic makeup of the person? And this whole subject is called pharmacogenomics. 药物基因组学，所以我们通过基因的因素来调整我们的药物。有些病人需要很多种药物，药物的量也是很高。Some people need a lot of medicine and the dosages are very high. Why? Some people need only a little bit and they can recover. Why? I have patients, they just take one kind of medicine and they are doing very well. And I have patients who need 3-4 types of medicine. So one day we hope to have what we call genomics, to have personalized treatment. And most important is also destigmatization. 取消那个污名化或歧视率。所以 the first thing we do, call it cognitive emotional disorder, CED, not 精神分裂, not schizophrenia. 我们要称为它是失觉失调症。And acceptance by the public and employer. And that's the point also made by Margaret in inclusion, social and community inclusion. Okay. And then finally, insurance coverage. Insurance companies shy away covering mental illness. 很多保险公司不要承保精神病的，因为他们觉得精神病太过主观了。They feel that it's too subjective. No objective evaluation, no objective tools are available for mental illness. So they shy away from insurance coverage. Those who cover mental illness, you have to pay a hefty sum for your annual premium, a large sum for your annual premium. I think we got to standardize it and say mental illness is also a physical illness. Mental illness is also a brain disorder. If you can cover encephalitis, cover epilepsy, why can't you cover CED, cognitive emotional disorder? So remember, can you see hope in schizophrenia? There is hope in schizophrenia. So it is a brain disorder. Don't stigmatize it. Let's move together and make it into CED and let it go into mainstream medicine, mainstream psychiatry, and not be stigmatized. Thank you for your kind attention. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much. 谢谢你们的收听。Bye bye.
Thank you, Dr. Ang.
Thank you
I
so
have
much.
something to ask.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Shirley?
Yes, right. Shirley here. Margaret was sharing about how we have to work along with the doctors regarding the patient, right? Okay. My sister is in her mid-60s and she's been in this condition for more than 40 years. And when she first see the psychiatrist in NUH, the psychiatrist used to work with me and my brother through phone calls and to understand her condition. And then now she's seeing the psychiatrist in Changi General Hospital, which is nearer to home. And they keep changing. I think they have young doctors. They, have different doctors each time. So the latest doctor, I called him up a couple of times to share with him about my sister's condition, because like Margaret said, your husband goes there, he will not reveal that he's unwell. They will hide their sickness. So they will, everything is okay, everything is okay. So, but we as caregiver will know the real problem behind it. So I called him a couple of times to try to feedback to him. And because of the PDPA, he refused to discuss with me. He's using it in the wrong sense already, because for schizophrenic people, if you don't listen to the family, how are you going to find out their condition actually? So instead of returning my call, he called my sister and told her to ask me to stop calling him. I haven't even talked to him, but he asked me to stop calling him. So I mean, quite frustrating, because who do I work with when my sister has problem? I do not know who to turn to.
Thank you for your question, Shirley. Just a moment. We're just going to have Waihan give a brief interpretation of your question in Mandarin, and then we'll open it to Dr. Ang as well as Margaret to address that. Thank you for your question, Shirley.
这位朋友，他刚才说，他有一位姐妹有40年那么长的思觉失调症，但是医院的医生常常更换，他不能够跟医生联络，直接联络，说怎么办呢？
Dr. Ang, would you like to begin the response?
That's a very good question. I think Margaret already alluded to it. Margaret said at IMH, you have a case manager. And the case manager is responsible for ensuring that there's continuity of care. Unfortunately, it's an ideal state, not available perhaps in some general hospital. General hospital have psychiatric department. So perhaps they looking forward, one day I also hope that they also can have case manager. So regardless of changes of medical officer looking at the patient, there's a constant caregiver. Margaret, maybe you would like to add on to it. Speaker mode, Margaret.
Yes. So I believe not every hospital operate like IMH, because I have known of friend sister who is in NUH. They also do not have this panel of mental health professionals. So the relative will have to work with the psychiatrist directly. Now, my advice is truly, every hospital definitely have their own system. And if this is the hospital that's most convenient to you, at the first appointment, you have to kind of establish that relationship with the psychiatrist. And normally I would do that. Even when my husband was sent to NNI to basically investigate whether he has early signs of dementia, I basically asked at the time of appointment to have a one-on-one with the doctor. And besides sitting in with my husband with the doctor, I established why I need to talk to the doctor, either before the meeting with the patient or after the meeting, and so that we could align on certain things and to fill his information gaps in the diagnosis. So I established that in the first meeting, whether with his psychologist, not just with the psychiatrist, or any doctor for that matter that I follow up on the appointment with him. Because if you do not establish that, when you try to come in later, this PDPA thing will get into will get into a hindrance for you, because some doctor, like in this case, clearly follow by the book, but you need to establish it up front rather than along the process you try to enter.
I used to go with her to the psychiatrist and so able to feedback to that psychiatrist. But unfortunately, they keep changing the doctors. These are all young junior doctors. They go around, to different hospital and they change. And after a short period of time, a new doctor again. So, and also my sister is aware that I feedback to the doctors. So she's not happy with me going with her as well. So that's why I try to use the phone calls to feedback to the doctor. But now with this latest doctor, it's a problem for me, I really don't know how to help her. And when she gets troubled, she will share with me, and I will try to ask her to focus. I don't really know how to help her except to tell her, don't look at the negative things, look at the positive things. But of course, she cannot see it that way. And she will get so angry, and she says, in future, I'm not going to share anything with you. So that's the scary part. She will, hide everything. So there's nobody else who can help her except me. And like what Dr. Ang said, they don't have friends. So I'm the only one that's close to her, actually.
I think I agree here that we need to work on this topic very closely. We need to influence or share with all these general hospital with psychiatric department the importance of a case manager and the continuity of care. Doctors can come and go, but there must be proper documentation for continuity of care.
Right.
There's such a thing called cross-sectionally. I can see you at this point, but I don't have the continuity in my mind. Don't have what I call longitudinal aspect of the patient, only the cross-sectional aspect. I may not want to change much, so every time I just repeat, carry on, because I don't want to take risk. I hardly know this patient. I've just taken over this case for the last few months. So I'll rather continue treatment. If you have been seeing this patient for years and know this patient so well, then you dare to say, I want to try another new medicine. I want to try a better medicine.
Right.
I think that there are advantages for this continuity of care. Margaret, would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I fully agree with that. Shirley, when I listened to what you said just now, I think that is also a lapse because unless you follow her through every appointment, because by not having that continuity, when the change of doctor comes, that's where you also have your challenge. And when my husband is in between admission as an outpatient, being transferred from the ward doctor to another doctor of preference in IMH, I also established a connection whereby I could email the doctor the day before the appointment to give him all the information, because I told him that my husband is very sensitive when I say everything in front of him to the doctor. And he gets very upset with me. So I send an email the day before so that the doctor refers to my email and then can do his job, right? To do a proper diagnosis of each consultative session. So I established all that upfront because I know the way my husband is. And I think they are pretty similar in nature for all, based on the description that you mentioned. And so with that kind of behavior, you just have to be much more proactive, and you have to be a few steps ahead in your planning.
Right. I try to do, but she doesn't want me to be there at all, you see. That is the problem. I used to fetch her there, bring her along. And,
Shirley, thank you so much for asking your question. It's very
can I just say
useful
just another few minutes? Just another few minutes.
We need to make
like what doctor say, after the medication has been over and over the same medication for years. There's no change whatsoever, you see. So the good thing is that in the past she will spit out her tablet, but now she would say she takes it. So I mean, I trust her to be taking it because she's at this age of 60 plus. So that is the problem. No adjustment to her medication.
I appreciate your sharing, Shirley. Thank you so much. Just want to be mindful that we do have.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Shirley, for your contribution. Just want to be mindful that we do have other caregivers, and we want to try to get through to everybody's questions, including those who are Mandarin speaking. So thank you, Shirley. Perhaps you can follow up your questions separately, and we'll be happy to funnel it to Dr. Ang for you. And now, if I may, I need to move on to the next question that we have for you, Dr. Ang. We have a question from our chat. Dr. Ang, how much of CED is attributed to genetic origin and how much to nurture?
Okay, CED or schizophrenia has a very large genetic component. say compared to say depression or anxiety or even OCD. Yeah? So schizophrenia in the hierarchy of illnesses, mental illnesses, schizophrenia is very high, followed by bipolar, then followed by depression, and then anxiety, OCD, and the rest. So in terms of genetic contribution, CED or schizophrenia is very high. If both parents have CED or schizophrenia, the risk of the child having schizophrenia will be 40%, as high as 40%. The general population, the risk is 1%. The risk of any one of us having schizophrenia is 1%. So if a sibling has schizophrenia, the risk of the sibling having schizophrenia is as high as 5 to 7%. If one parent has schizophrenia, the risk of the child having schizophrenia can go up to as high as 10%. So we know that genetic basis for schizophrenia is definitely there. But having said that, why is it that why not 100%? It's not 100% because environment plays a part as well. Environment makes sure that although you are prone to schizophrenia or CED, you don't necessarily get it if you are well nurtured, well brought up in a secure environment.
In a secure.
刚才那个问者问精神分裂的基因发现率是不是很高？精神分裂思觉失调症是不是跟基因有关系的 ？Yes， 真的有关系的。如果父母两个都有精神分裂CED 思觉失调症，孩子的得到失调症的发现率会提高到40%。如果一个母亲或者父亲有这个病呢，发现率会10%，两个40%，一个就10%。如果你姐姐、弟弟、哥哥、妹妹有这个病呢，你的发现率会增加到5到7%。人口方面呢是1%，通常的人我们会得到这种病的发现率是1%，真的跟基因有关系的。可是为什么没有100%呢？因为环境也是很重要。有些人他们有这种病的倾向，可是有好的环境，给他们安全感，给他们好好的成长，得到这种病的发现率会降低的。谢谢。
Thank you, Dr. Ang. May I also trouble you to perhaps give a Mandarin summary of our response to the earlier question with regards to the importance of having either a case manager or a caregiver that is able to attend or accompany our loved ones for each of their sessions with the doctor or therapy, as Margaret mentioned in English earlier.
刚才第一个询问者他的问题是，他每次陪他的 sister 姐姐或者是妹妹去看病的时候，每次都是换医生的，没有固定的医生，所以他非常的失望，而且他的姐姐不喜欢他去，因为他不喜欢他跟医生讲一些话，他不喜欢，他说你在我的背后讲一些不好听的不好的话。所以变成没有固定的医生，所以没有固定的医生就很难有好的医疗的方式，药物的调整是比较难了，因为这些医生一直换，所以有时候他们难免会说，哎呀，我不要换药了，因为我只有照顾这个病人几个月而已。如果有长远的计划，今天就是不同了。如果是同样一个医生常常看这个病人，他就有把握换药，他就会有一种比较彻底的照顾这个病人。谢谢。
Thank you so much, Dr. Ang. We have another question now, which we have received from Mona. I will say it in English, and Waihan, my co-host, will interpret it in Mandarin for you. Dr. Ang, schizoaffective versus schizophrenia, which is more difficult to treat? Waihan?
这个问题提到两个名词啊 ，schizophrenia、schizoaffective 有什么分别？我不懂中文名字是什么，医生可以告诉我们吧？
好 ，schizophrenia 是当中脑跟大脑没有合作，很明显的失调症，思觉失调症 ，cognitive emotional disorder。Schizoaffective is between bipolar and schizophrenia. Schizoaffective, the word affective 就是情绪，所以 schizoaffective 就是一部分是精神分裂，一部分是躁郁症。So schizoaffective comprises schizophrenia and symptoms of bipolar. 就是有 schizophrenia 又有 mood disorder。所以哪一个比较好医呢？我觉得呢 schizoaffective has better prognosis than schizophrenia. Why? 因为它有那个 affective component. Affective 就是 emotional component. 有 emotional component 呢，就是有一点 mood 的 problem, mood disorder, 躁郁症的病症，情绪化的病症，所以变成不是纯正的 schizophrenia， 不是纯正的那个精神分裂，也是包括有一点躁郁症。So schizoaffective refers to a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar symptoms, mood symptom, even if you don't call it bipolar, mood symptom. But once we talk about CE disorder, cognitive emotional disorder, maybe you have a bigger E and a smaller C. That will be cognitive emotional disorder or schizoaffective disorder. Maybe you can do away with schizoaffective disorder. Just concentrate on schizo, just consider CED, cognitive emotional disorder. How much is emotional? How much is cognitive? Varies from patient to patient. So schizoaffective 是指有一点是精神分裂，有一点是躁郁症的病症，两个结合起来就变成 schizoaffective。当我们用思觉失调症的时候，可能我们不用到 schizoaffective 了，因为思觉失调症里面也是有觉，也是有 emotion， 也是有 affective component。好 ，OK。
Thank you, Dr. Ang.
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful for our Mandarin-speaking listeners. I have a question now that we would like to direct to Margaret, and I ask for Waihan's assistance in translating the question first into Mandarin. Margaret, as we know, employees are not obligated to declare about their mental health conditions to their employers. However, I always encourage my loved one to declare if the question appeared in the application form. Is that wrong of me to encourage my loved one to be candid regarding his mental health condition? What if he wasn't given a fair opportunity due to the declaration? I am in dilemma. Waihan?
这个问题是说，我们普通申请工作的时候，其实不需要说明自己有没有这个精神病，但是我常常对我的家人说，如果你申请的时候，最好要填上说有。这个问题是因为很多雇主可能都会歧视这些有精神病的人，所以我这样劝我的家人，对不对呢 ，Margaret？
This is a tough position to be in, I would say. Now, I think as a caregiver to your loved one, you would probably understand how well or how functioning is your loved one. If your loved one is a high-functioning individual, and you feel that your loved one is being realistic in the position the job that he or she is applying for, then I would ask that the person do not declare, so that the person has a chance to prove themselves in the job. However, if my loved one is being unrealistic and they are not as high functioning, I would advise them to declare, because it's not fair to the employer.
这个答案不简单，但是我的看法是，如果我觉得我的家人的病情已经稳定，或者不是太严重，而他所申请的工作是适合他的能力去做的，那我会劝他说不用填写关于他有精神病的病历。而反过来说，如果我的家人是其实还不到稳定的情况下去申请一份不大适合他去做的不能够应付的工作，那他应该填说他曾有或正在接受治疗，精神病治疗，这样才会对他的雇主有个好的交代。
In fact, I would add, if your loved one is able to prove herself during the probation period, at the end of the probation period, she needs to openly declare. And because she has proven herself that she's able to meet the employer's expectations, it's better to be truthful, and it's up to the employer to continue to retain her, or, not willing to accept her to be in the job. I think at that point, she also had a chance to prove her own ability to build confidence and knowing what next step would be in the next job, if in the event this employer rejects her for her honesty.
One day, I hope we embrace mental illness into mainstream medicine or psychiatry. This question becomes redundant because why are we so upset why are we so worried about declaring or not declaring? If you have a physical illness, you declare, right? You have thyroid problem, you declare. But why should, when it comes to mental illness, we have a dilemma? I hope one day this dilemma will disappear. That's the day when we arrive as an inclusive society, if you like. Okay. Can't hear, Wei Han.
Margaret 先说，那个，比如说他的家人得到那份工作，经过了一段那个试验期，他的表现得到接受和肯定，那时候他应该透露他有精神病，那就等他的雇主他的上司接不接受，要不要继续雇佣他。就算不雇佣他，他在这段试验时期也得到更好的自尊，或者可以说自信更多的自信，说自己能够应付什么工作，让他在申请另一份工作的时候有很好的那个准备。那洪医生讲呢，哇，更贴切。他说，希望有一天，精神病跟其他病状一样不论是你有胆固醇高啦，或者什么thyroid 病都好，那应该被社会接受。我们不需要考虑需不需要填写这个病状。那这就是真正包容的社会包容一切，什么病都好病人。
Thank you so much, Dr. Ang, for your input as well. I'm sure everybody else in this room is in agreement that we are all working towards a society that is more inclusive and understands that the mental health condition is part of our overall well-being as a human being. Dr. Ang, if I may ask the next question specifically for you, I will ask it and then Wai Han will interpret and then we can open the floor to you for a response. Earlier, you mentioned that genetic disposition has an effect on whether or not a person will get affected by schizophrenia. We do have a question. If there's any other causes or trigger for this particular brain disorder. Wai Han?
这个问题是说，除了基因方面的问题那这个思觉失调症有没有其他的起因呢？洪医生。
The causes are multiple. You have a genetic predisposition, but you need the environmental stressors, whether it's stress at work, stress in school, or interpersonal relationship problem to bring about the illness, if you like. So if you talk about causes I think are mainly linked to the amount of stress the person can accept, whether the person can cope with the stress or not. If the person cannot cope and there is a genetic predisposition, then it's easier to have the illness. Wei Han?
当然，基因是有固定的因素，是固定的因素但是另外是那个人能够承受多少压力，就会影响有没有并发这个问题。因为如果工作上、情感上或者学业上碰到钉子的话，而这个人不能够好好的处理这些方面的压力，那加上他的基因基本上的问题，加起来就可能会发作有病。
Thank you, Wai Han. Thank you, Dr. Ang. I would like to accommodate one more question before we wrap up for the evening. And this one is for Margaret with regards to the caregiving journey. Margaret, caregiving for a loved one diagnosed with mental health condition is a lonely and difficult journey. Not everyone around us can empathize, and it gets overwhelming for us as caregivers, especially during relapses. How do I reach out to the people around me and perhaps get them to support me as well as my loved one in our respective journeys?
这个问题说，这个孤单的历程照顾我们身边患病的家人，那有时候真的很想考虑怎么样才能够得到别人的体谅，家人也好，亲戚朋友或者周围的人，因为实在是很困难的一个历程。Margaret?
I would say this. Prior to having a situation where you have someone who is mentally ill, the family is somewhat close-knitted. Then it is an easy path forward to get their involvement, as opposed to the family being dysfunctional, even prior to having that crisis on hand. So, however, in a situation where you have a normal family that is functional, like in my case, having that crisis on hand with my husband, decided to involve my children right from the beginning, meaning that I engage their help because I was working and I needed help to look out for their dad when I wasn't around. Example, to pick up the medication from Dr. Ang's office, to ensure that the dad takes medication when I wasn't around. So I had to involve my kids, lobby for their involvement, because I told them it is important that I keep my job, and their help is needed to ensure that their dad can get better. And to involve them, I also make sure that they sort of understood, even though they are young, the layman term of what's happening to their dad. And that's why, you know, they were brought in for a session with Dr. Ang to explain what's wrong with their dad. Otherwise, it is hard to involve your loved one without even the basic information to educate them about the illness, the condition, what would they expect from the symptoms, so that they know what they sign up for. And again, you know, you need to have a person in the family that will basically pull the rest of the members together. In my case, obviously, I'm the second in command after my husband, and my kids were young, so I can do it. So if you are all adult situation, and if you are not a parent, but you are one of the siblings and trying to get everyone else to support the sibling, this person better have a way to command the respect from the rest of the siblings to be able to do that. Otherwise, it will be difficult. All right, I wanted to be realistic as well. It will take much more effort for you to get everyone else to come in to support the loved one.
当然要得到家人的共鸣是很重要。如果你的家庭是一个完整的、美满的家庭，在那个家人发病之前，那让你的爱人发病之后，就比较容易得到其他人的资助。那如果你的家庭成员已经不是很合作，那可能就会比较难。而如果你可以的话，你不是家里的中心人物，你要拉拢全家人来照顾这位病人，就更难。那Margaret 以他自己的经历来讲，他一开始就把2个小儿子都包括在这个照顾丈夫的圈子里，带他们一起去见洪医生，让洪医生跟他们解释究竟这个 schizophrenia 思觉失调症是什么病，让他们明白病的变成是怎样，药的帮助又是怎样，那最后爸爸会好还是怎样，这一切他们都有机会向洪医生了解，让他们积极的帮忙。因为 Margaret 本身还是在工作，她需要工作来继续照顾整个家，那孩子们会帮忙去取药或者观察爸爸的行为来通知妈妈。那这一切说明了我们要做照顾者，也要做一个好的家庭成员然后可以大家一起鼓励怎么照顾我们心爱的人。好。
Thank you so much, Margaret, for that response, and Waihan for helping us interpret that in Mandarin. I apologize that we're not able to accommodate more questions because we are running out of time. But I appreciate everyone. If you have any pressing questions, please feel free and get in touch with the team here at Cal, and we'll be happy to try and facilitate the questions to our panelists at a separate time. In the meantime, I ask that my co-hosts help me in welcoming our speakers. to say their parting words as we wrap up for this evening. Waihan?
我们现在请我们两位讲员分享他们最后的思维。洪医生，你想先讲吗 ？Dr. Ang first.
It's a very difficult journey for Margaret, and she's done very well. And she's indeed a model caregiver. I hope her story can inspire more people. And to get to know her and her journey well, please buy a copy of the book, because it also helps to part of the purchase price will go to CAL as well. So please support Margaret as well as CAL. Buy a book. Thank you.
Margaret 所走的路程真的不简单。那我觉得她是一个顶呱呱的照顾者，所以她写的这本书值得你们看。我希望你们会支持她，也支持买这本书，因为这个书价的一部分会捐给照顾者联盟。谢谢。
Margaret, would you like to share your parting words, having taken us through this incredible journey with you? I'm sure that our listeners, our participants would like to hear some final words from you.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. First, thank you, Dr. Ang, for being encouraging in my entire caregiving journey. I think if it's not for Dr. Ang's encouragement for me to write a book, I wouldn't have started on this project. But I took it seriously for a couple of reasons. One is I definitely have gone through many trials and errors. And those are not easy. And by sharing it, I hope everyone could actually learn from my mistakes. I was also hoping that by writing this book, I left behind something for my family members, not just my children, but for my siblings. In the event something happened to me, there is continuity for them to understand what is going on and know how to help me in caring for my husband if something were to happen to me. And thirdly, I felt that this book, by giving an insight, by being very honest in my sharing, I hope even people who are not caregivers nor have any experience with mental illness can understand what goes on in the lives of people, a family living with someone with mental illness. And with that, I hope to build awareness in the community about mental illness. And hopefully, with that understanding and that insight, our society will develop empathy for family who are in this situation. So my parting word is, I thank you for your support for this fundraising campaign and for getting a copy of this book to help CAL to continue with what they need in support of caregivers. I also ask you to stay strong, do not give up hope, and continue to champion for your loved ones.
最后Margaret想说这些话，先感激洪医生，因为他真的支持我，鼓励我，在这个照顾我丈夫的过程，包括鼓励我写这本书，我很努力，很执着的去写我把我所做错的都写下来了，主要是希望别人可以从中得到一些功课， 不要重犯我所做错的东西。第二点是，我写这本书是希望为我的丈夫的照料铺后路。怎么讲呢？因为我怕如果有什么事情发生在我身上的时候，我不能继续照顾他。那我希望我的姐弟们，我的家人会明白我丈夫的情况，非常了解他是怎么样的需要处理这个病情的照料，希望他们会继续照顾他。第三，我也很坦诚的写出我一切的经历，因为我希望读者不管是有照顾病患的照顾者，或者是社会大众，都能够对精神病有更好的了解，希望他们也能够包容这些患病的人。当然，这个照顾者联盟会得到一些好处，因为如果卖了这些书的价格，有一部分可以捐给CAL， 继续他们做他们的好工作，来支持更多的照顾者，那是我的愿望。那最终我想祝福所有的照顾者，希望你们会继续坚强的走下去这条路，不要气馁，因为总有光亮的一天。谢谢大家。Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure being a part of this journey with you. Thank you to Dr. Ang for your professional perspective tonight, to our participants who have been with us for every single session. I hope that this session has been insightful for all of you. Please do take the opportunity to purchase the book. We have on screen right now the links for you to be able to make your purchase. And we encourage you to also share this with your family and friends whom you want to encourage to raise awareness around the journey of caring for a loved one with mental illness. Again, 40% of sales from the books purchased between now and the end of April will be donated to CAL. And we really appreciate Margaret as well as Word Image for making this possible. I'd like to also highlight that all of the participants here today will be receiving an evaluation feedback link, which via email, and we would really appreciate it if all of you can please take the time to provide feedback so that we can better improve our sessions in future. Waihan?
我很感激 Margaret 在这段时期跟我们一起分享。对不起 ，Sorry 我希望大家在这过程中得到更好的认识，对精神病照顾方面也有得到鼓励。也希望你们会支持这本书，因为这个价格那个售价会捐给CAL。最后我们的网上有一个每位参与的朋友会收到一个连线一条连线，一个 link， 请你们回复对今晚的那个节目有什么意见，希望可以帮我们日后做更好的呈现更好的节目给大家。谢谢大家。
Thank you so much, Waihan, for being a wonderful co-host, and thank you to everyone for spending your evening with us. We wish you well and be safe, and thank you again to Dr. Ang and of course Margaret. Without you, none of this would have been possible. Thank you all so much.
Good night.